There are nights in this job that pass so quietly you begin to wonder why the station exists at all. Nights when the door barely opens, the phone stays silent, and the desert itself seems to hold its breath. That night was one of them. The wind outside carried only dust and the faint smell of juniper, drifting through the cracks in the old window frames of our small station tucked deep inside the reservation. The lights hummed with their usual tired flicker. The only sound was the soft ticking of the wall clock, counting down the minutes of a shift I believed would end without incident. I remember leaning back in my chair, boots up on the edge of the desk, staring at a stack of reports I had no real motivation to finish. Sometimes the quiet feels like a blessing. Other times it feels like a warning. Looking back now, I know that night belonged to the second kind. The calm broke when Deputy Ortiz pushed through the door, out of breath, dust clinging to his uniform as if he had run through half the desert. Behind him, 2 tribal officers stepped in carrying a man between them. He was barefoot. His clothes were torn and coated in the red earth of the reservation. His dark hair hung loose to his shoulders, and his face carried the kind of stillness that made the air shift. Ortiz called out to me, "Sheriff, we found him wandering near the old dry wash. Locals said he was watching their homes. We tried talking to him, but he kept repeating the same thing." The man lifted his head and looked at me. Really looked. His eyes were deep and unreadable, like dark water reflecting no light at all. I stood and approached him. "You got a name?" He answered in a voice so calm it unsettled me. "Names are not important tonight." He spoke with a steady certainty that did not match the dirt on his skin or the exhaustion in his posture. I frowned. "Fine. Then tell me why you were wandering near private homes." He blinked slowly, as if trying to choose the simplest way to say something complicated. "I was not watching them. I was watching what was watching them." Ortiz grew tense beside him. One of the tribal officers muttered something under his breath in Navajo. I crossed my arms. "You are scaring people. You need to sit down, maybe get medical attention. Tell me what is going on." The man shook his head. "There is no time for that, Sheriff. The moon rises full tonight. I warned the others, but they would not listen. Perhaps you will." The way he spoke made the hair at the back of my neck rise despite myself. "Listen to what?" "To the truth." He straightened enough that the tribal officers loosened their grip. Then he said it. "I am a Skinwalker, and you must not lock me up tonight." I stared at him. For a long moment I was too stunned to speak. Then the disbelief came out of me the way it always does, in a short dry laugh. "You are cursed to transform when the moon rises, is that it?" His expression did not change. "Yes." Ortiz shot me a look that asked if we should keep humoring him or get the medic. I chose the usual route. "All right, that is enough. Bring him to the holding cell until we sort this out." The tribal officers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them stepped closer to me and murmured quietly, "Sheriff, there are stories, old stories. If he says this, maybe call the elders." I waved it off. He needs rest, not rituals. I should not have dismissed the warning. I know that now. We guided the man down the hall to the reinforced cell we used for particularly unruly arrests. But he did not resist. He walked with a strange calmness, as though he had accepted whatever was coming. The air in the hallway felt colder than the rest of the station, the kind of cold that settles into the bones. When the cell door shut with a firm metallic echo, the man stepped to the back wall and sat down. His posture was straight, hands at his sides, eyes fixed on the small window where the last faint glow of sunset slipped through. I studied him a moment longer. "You want to tell me why you think you are a Skinwalker?" His gaze remained locked on the fading light. "Because I have carried the curse for many years. Too many. And tonight the full moon will break whatever binds me to this shape." I felt Ortiz shift uncomfortably beside me. "Look," I said, "you are exhausted. You are probably dehydrated. We will have someone check you out in the morning. Until then, rest." He turned his head slowly toward me. "Do not lie to yourself, Sheriff. You can feel it already, can you not? The air changing, the silence growing heavier, something old moving beneath the night." A pulse of cold air drifted through the hallway then, So sudden and unnatural I almost stepped back. Ortiz rubbed his arms. "Feels like winter in here," he muttered. The man lowered his voice. "I should not be in this cage when the moon rises. You do not understand what will happen if I am. And what is that? The change will break more than the iron." His voice carried something that made my stomach tighten. I tried to shrug it off, but the feeling clung to me. "You expect me to take this seriously?" He closed his eyes. "It does not matter whether you believe me, only that you remember what comes after." The room fell quiet. Too quiet. The man opened his eyes again and whispered in a voice that barely carried across the cell. "The moon will be over the ridge soon." I stepped back, no longer sure if I was annoyed or unnerved. "Get some rest," I said. As I turned away, he spoke one last time. "Sheriff." I paused. "When the moonlight touches the desert floor tonight, it will break whatever binds me. And I will not be what you see now." A chill crawled down my spine. I dismissed it, walked away. But the truth is, that whisper followed me all the way down the hallway and settled inside my chest like something waiting to wake up. And that was how the night really began. I tried to focus on paperwork after we locked him up, but the words on the page refused to settle into place. My pen felt heavier with every line I tried to write. The station was too quiet. The air felt still in a way I could not explain, like the entire building was holding its breath with me. Something about the way that man had spoken stayed under my skin, as if his voice had settled deep inside the walls. Ortiz paced the main room, his boots tapping anxiously against the old tile floor. Every few minutes he glanced down the hallway toward the cell block, as though expecting something to step out of the darkness. "You all right?" I asked him. He shrugged, but the forced casualness made it worse. "Just feels strange tonight, like the cold came in with him." I did not want to admit it, but I felt it too. The desert is known for cold nights, but inside the station the chill felt unnatural, almost deliberate. Finally I stood. "I want to talk to him again." Ortiz stopped tapping his boots. "Now?" "Sheriff, the man is not right. I don't know what he is, but something about him feels wrong. Maybe wait for the medic." "No, something is off. And I need to hear more from him before this night gets any stranger." I stepped toward the hallway. Ortiz followed a few steps behind, but he did not enter the cell block. He stopped at the doorway, rubbing his arms again as that cold air brushed over us like a warning. I walked forward alone. The lights in the hallway flickered as I approached. Just once at first, then again. A slow pulsing glow that made the shadows on the walls dance in long distorted shapes. I swallowed and forced my steps to stay steady. When I reached the cell, the man was exactly where I left him. Sitting near the back wall, legs crossed, hands resting on his knees, eyes closed as if in meditation. The only difference was the air. Felt thick, heavy, charged with something I could not name. Cleared my throat. "I want to ask you a few questions." He opened his eyes, and for a moment the air shifted again, as if something invisible had stirred between us. "Go on, Sheriff." His voice was calm, too calm, a quiet stillness that made the hair on my arms rise. "Start with your name." He tilted his head slightly. "Names are for those who stay in one shape. I have not been one thing long enough to keep one." I tried again. "How long have you lived on the reservation?" "Longer than you have worn that badge." I blinked. I had been sheriff for almost 27 years. I asked another question. "Who were you before all this?" His eyes softened in a way that made him look almost human again. "A boy who was not careful. A boy who walked where he should not have walked. A boy who heard a story and thought himself braver than its warning." I frowned. "What kind of story?" "One the elders whisper only when the fire is low and the children are asleep. A story about a path that should never be followed. A ritual that should never be seen. A voice that should never be answered." He looked toward the small barred window, where the last traces of evening light had faded. The moon had not risen yet, but its presence already pressed against the night like a promise. I stepped closer to the bars. "Were you cursed?" His eyes met mine with a shadowed truth. "Cursed, chosen, devoured, freed. The words are small, Sheriff. The thing inside me is not." His voice wavered, not with fear but with something deeper, a sorrow that clung to every syllable. I studied his face. There was something strange about his skin now, a subtle tension beneath the surface, as if something pressed outward from inside. I took a step back without meaning to. He noticed. It begins before the moon rises, he said quietly. The body feels it first. The bones remember before the mind does. I tried to stay rational. Listen, I said, lowering my voice. You need help. Medical help. Whatever you believe you are struggling with, we can work through it. This is not something supernatural. It is fear, trauma, something in your past. He tilted his head again in that unsettling way. You speak like a man who has always believed the sun will rise when it should. You trust the laws of the world around you. But tonight those laws will turn their face away from you. There was a moment of silence then. A long, cold moment where the only sound was my own heartbeat. I forced my voice to stay steady. Tell me about the ritual. The man inhaled slowly, his chest rising with a quiet tremor. It was not meant for me. I was foolish. I followed something through the canyon. A shape that was not a shape. A voice that knew my name, though I had never spoken it aloud. I should have run back to my family, but I followed it deeper. He closed his eyes again. By the time I understood, it was too late. The ground had already chosen me. The shadow had already taken root. My throat tightened. What did you see? His eyes snapped open. The end of the man I once was. The hallway lights flickered again. Not the soft pulse from before. This time they dimmed to near darkness and then flared back to full brightness with a quiet electric groan. I felt a heaviness settle in my chest. You said the curse breaks when the full moon rises, I said. What does that mean exactly? He smiled, but it was not a smile of joy or malice. It was the smile of someone who knew he was already standing on the edge of something irreversible. It means that I will stop pretending to be human. The moonlight will unmask me, and the cage you built will not hold what I become. A cold sweat ran down my spine. Why tell me this? Why warn us? Because you laughed. He said it with no anger, no accusation, only a quiet sadness. And because you do not know what it means to lock a thing like me behind iron. I took a breath. What are you trying to say? He let silence fill the space between us. Then he spoke in a voice that barely sounded like his own. I am not warning you. I am warning the night. Before I could respond, the lights flickered once more. The cold deepened, and somewhere outside, past the canyon ridge, a pale glow began to rise. The moon was coming. I could feel it, and so could he. He leaned forward slightly, gripping the metal bars with both hands. His fingers looked longer than before. Too long. Sheriff, he whispered, do you feel it? I did. Even then, before the moon crested the ridge, I felt something in the air shift, as if the desert itself were preparing for something ancient to wake. I stepped back. My voice was barely steady. I will check on you again soon. He smiled softly. No, Sheriff. The next time you come down this hallway, you will not find me. A chill ran through me so deep it felt like it cut bone. Outside, the moon rose another inch, casting a faint ghostly glow across the windows. And the night shifted. The transformation had begun. The moon rose slowly behind the ridge, but the moment its light touched the desert floor, the air changed. I felt it before I saw it. A pressure that pushed against my ribs. A strange tension that crept along the station walls like an invisible hand. Even the old would seem to groan beneath it. I stood in the hallway, staring toward the cell block, unable to shake the feeling that something living and ancient had stepped into the room with me. Ortiz called from the front desk. Sheriff, the lights are flickering again. The breaker is good. The generator is steady. I do not understand this. I heard the fear in his voice, the kind that comes from instinct rather than reason. I felt it too. Stay there, I said quietly. Do not come down this hall unless I call for you. He did not argue. That alone told me how wrong the night had become. I turned toward the cell block. The lights above me pulsed once, then dimmed until only the faint glow from the moonlit window at the end of the hall remained. My footsteps echoed in a way they had never echoed before, as if the building were empty and endless. When I reached the barred door, he was no longer sitting. He was standing, right in the center of the cell, motionless, waiting. The moonlight filtered through the high window, casting long pale bars across the floor and over his body. The shadows around him seemed to cling to him, as if drawn to his skin. His posture was wrong. Every limb seemed just a little too still, his back a little too straight, his balance a little too perfect. I stepped closer, gripping the flashlight, though I sensed it would not matter. "Tell me what is happening," I demanded, though my voice came out softer than I intended. He turned his head toward me, slow and deliberate, his neck moving like something unaccustomed to being inside a human frame. When his face settled into view, my breath caught. His eyes were changing. The irises had darkened until they were almost black. The pupils were wide and hollow, as if they were not taking in light but swallowing it. I felt something ancient in that gaze, something that did not belong to any man. He spoke in a voice that vibrated through the metal bars. "It has begun, Sheriff." His breath came out in a cold mist. The room was freezing now. I could see my own breath hanging in the air. "What is happening to you?" I whispered. He did not look away. "The moon calls the truth out of me, and there is no turning back now." He took a step forward. The shadows followed him, stretching unnaturally across the walls. His footsteps made no sound, not a single one. It was like watching a ghost move in a human shape. I found myself stepping back. "Stay where you are." He smiled faintly. "I am still here." For the moment, his skin shifted. Not dramatically, not like something from a film. It was subtler, more horrifying because of that. A small ripple beneath the surface, like muscles rearranging themselves. The joints in his fingers stretched, bending too far in one direction and then snapping back. A faint cracking sound echoed. I pressed my back against the wall. The reinforced cell door between us felt suddenly meaningless. "Tell me something," I said, forcing the words out. "If this curse is real, if this thing is taking you over, why warn us? Why come here at all?" His face twitched, pain flickering for the first time. "Because part of me still remembers what it means to care. Part of me knows the creature that wakes inside me will not. I hoped to be far from people when it happened. But the thing that hunts me drove me here. It wanted me in a cage. It wanted you to see." I felt my heart pounding. "What hunts you?" He closed his eyes and whispered, "The one who made me." The lights above us flickered wildly. The hallway plunged into darkness for a heartbeat, then lit again with a harsh electric hum. When the lights returned, he was no longer at the front of the cell. He was at the back, crouched, his spine arched, his hands pressed into the floor like an animal ready to leap. I stumbled backward, knocking into the wall. A low rumbling sound filled the cell. Not a growl. Something deeper. Something that vibrated through the floor and into my bones. I shouted down the hall. "Ortiz, do not come here. Stay back." There was no answer. Only the sound of the man in the cell breathing heavier and faster, each breath sounding less human. His shoulders bulged. His neck elongated slightly. His jaw trembled as though fighting to contain something inside. I pressed the flashlight to the bars, trying to see more clearly, but the shadows around him swallowed the beam. Then something unbelievable happened. The reinforced bars shook. Not much, just a faint tremor, but enough to make the door rattle and the metal grind against the frame. The man did not touch the door. He only breathed, and with each breath, the air in the room seemed to thicken. I felt my throat tighten. "Do not do this," I whispered. He lifted his head slowly, his hair falling away from his face. His features were half human, half something else. Something older. Something that did not belong in a world of badges and cells and laws. His voice came out layered, two tones speaking at once. "I cannot stop it, Sheriff. And neither can you." Suddenly the lights died completely. The station fell into utter darkness. I could not see my hands in front of me, could not see the bars, could not see him. Only the faint, terrible sound of bones shifting, skin stretching, something crawling inside the cell with unnatural speed. I raised the flashlight and clicked it on. Nothing happened. Again. Nothing. A cold whisper drifted toward me from the darkness. Sheriff. I froze. The voice was not behind the bars. It was right beside me. I swung the dead flashlight blindly and stumbled back. Something brushed past me. Cold and fast. A movement without shape. A presence that carried ancient weight. Then the hallway lights surged back on in one blinding flash. The cell door stood untouched. Closed. Locked. And empty. Completely empty. There was nowhere he could have gone. No broken bars. No open lock. No hole in the wall. No vent big enough for a dog, let alone a man. I grabbed the bars with both hands, shaking them in disbelief. This is not possible. My voice echoed down the hall. This is not possible. Ortiz finally ran into the hallway, stopping behind me, his face pale. Sheriff, the cameras just cut out. Every single one. I felt the cold settle into me like a stone. He is gone, I whispered. The cell was locked. It was locked the entire time. Ortiz stared at the empty space. Where did he go? I did not answer, because the truth was already crawling up my spine. He had not escaped. He had changed. And whatever he became was now somewhere in the station with us. The moonlight spilled through the hall window then, casting a long narrow beam across the floor. 2 footprints appeared in the beam. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. Something that had no place in our world. And they were moving away from the cell. Slowly. Quietly. Toward the dark end of the hallway. The footprints stopped just outside the beam of moonlight, as if whatever made them knew exactly where the light ended. Beyond that point, the hallway stretched into a blackness so thick it felt alive. Ortiz stood beside me, frozen in place, his body rigid with fear. The silence of the station pressed against us like a living thing, growing heavier with every passing second. Sheriff, he whispered. Where is it? I did not answer. I was afraid that speaking too loudly would draw something out of the dark. I stepped forward slowly, keeping my back against the wall as I moved the beam of moonlight with my body. But as soon as I leaned into that darkness, a cold whisper drifted down the hall. Not a word. Just a breath. A long, slow exhale that felt intentional. Ortiz grabbed my arm. We need to get out. Right now. We need backup, tribal police, federal agents, I do not care who. We are not staying in this building. I looked back toward the empty cell, its door sealed tight, unchanged, undamaged. The reinforced bars still gleamed under the faint emergency light. There was no logical explanation, no physical possibility for the prisoner to have left that room without opening that door. And yet the door was untouched. A low sound echoed from the far end of the hallway. Not footsteps, not breathing, something else. A soft dragging noise, like claws brushing against concrete but not quite touching it. It is moving, I said quietly. Ortiz let out a shaky breath. We are not following it. We are not hunting that thing. We do not have a choice. If it leaves the station, we will never find it again. And the elders will know we lost something we were not meant to lose. I wish I could say I believed we stood a chance. The truth is I already knew we were outmatched. Whatever had walked out of that cell was not a man. Not a prisoner, not anything that belonged in a cage. I moved forward, the darkness swallowing me with each step. I raised my flashlight out of instinct, even though it had already failed. I clicked it once more. Nothing. The beam of the moon was the only light still fighting against the shadows. At the end of the hall, something shifted. A shape sliding away just as my eyes adjusted. I turned my head sharply. Did you see that? Ortiz whispered. I did not want to, but yes. We reached the corner where the hall opened into the small storeroom. The door was half open, a dark void beyond it. I felt a breeze brush past me, unnaturally cold for inside a building. My breath came out misted. I pushed the door gently. It swung open without a sound. Inside the storeroom, the shelves were untouched. The boxes were neatly stacked. Nothing was broken or disturbed, but the far window was wide open. The frame bent outward as though someone had pushed through it. Someone far stronger than any man. I leaned out slowly. The night was wide and still. The desert stretched in every direction. a sea of stone and sand under the bright rising moon. The breeze carried the faint smell of sage and dust. I scanned the ground below the window. Tracks. Not human. Not animal. Mixed. Changing shape from print to print as though the creature had not yet decided what it wanted to be. They led into the dark forest edge just beyond the floodlights. Ortiz stepped beside me. We are not going in there. I am not following that thing into those trees. Before I could answer, a voice drifted out of the shadows of the woods. Sheriff. It said my title so clearly it might have been whispered right behind me. Ortiz stumbled back, nearly tripping over a storage bin. I stood frozen, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Sheriff, come and see. The words echoed through the trees in a way no human voice could. They stretched as though carried by something that had more than lungs. Something that understood mimicry well enough to use it. Ortiz looked at me with terror in his eyes. It is playing with you. I know. You are not going out there. I know that too. But the truth was, something inside me was already pulling toward the woods. Not curiosity. Not duty. Something deeper. Something that felt like being watched by a presence that expected me to follow. I stepped back from the window. Close it. Lock the room. No one goes outside. No one enters the cell block alone. We wait until daylight. Ortiz nodded and rushed to get the others. I returned to the main room and waited. I stood at the front desk, staring at the windows, feeling the weight of the full moon pressing through the glass. The tribal elders arrived within the hour. They entered the station without speaking. Their faces were grave, unreadable. They moved down the hall toward the empty cell, stopping just before they reached it. One elder placed his palm against the wall and whispered to the others in a language older than the settlement that built the station. Finally, one of them faced me. Sheriff, you should never have locked him inside. His voice was calm, not accusatory. You know what he was, I said quietly. They nodded. We know what he was becoming. And we know what has awakened now. What is it? They exchanged glances. Then the oldest among them said a phrase that made the room feel colder than before. Not a man. Not a spirit. Something in between. Something that should never have been bound. I swallowed. Can we track it? No. Can we trap it? No. Then what can we do? The elder sighed. The sound heavy with centuries of regret. Survive. A silence fell over the station. A silence that settled into the walls, the floor, the air. The elders stood motionless for a moment longer, then began placing markings along the doorway of the cell block, speaking in low voices. Their words sounded like warnings to the night itself. When they finished, the oldest approached me again. You must not follow it. You must not call to it. And if it calls to you, do not answer. I looked toward the window, where the forest loomed like an ocean of shadow. It knows me. Yes, the elder replied softly. It will return for you. Why me? Because you locked it away. Because you saw it shed its name and its skin. Because you are the last face it saw before it was reborn. His next words chilled me deeper than any winter wind. And because a skinwalker does not forget the person who cages it. I stared at him, the truth settling like a stone in my chest. Outside, the wind shifted through the trees. And through that wind, far in the distance, came a voice that froze every bone in my body. Sheriff, calling me, from somewhere deep in the reservation woods. Calling me again. Sheriff. The elders bowed their heads. It has begun. And the moon was only at its first hour. I never filed the true report. I never wrote down what I saw or what I heard in that station. The official record shows nothing more than a missing suspect and a series of electrical failures during a routine night shift. Everything else was buried, scattered into sealed statements and quiet warnings from authorities who refused to look me in the eye. But what really happened never left me. It stayed in my bones. And now, years later, I speak it out loud because silence has become heavier than truth. After the elders gave their warnings, the rest of that night passed in a kind of haunted stillness. We stayed in the front room, all of us too afraid to walk the hall where the cell block remained dark as an open grave. The elders waited near the door, chanting under their breath in a language older than the reservation itself. Their voices never rose above a whisper, yet the sound filled every corner of the station. Just before dawn, the chanting stopped. The oldest elder approached me again. "It is gone for now," he said, "but do not mistake this for safety. The transformation has taken hold. It no longer belongs to your laws or ours." I swallowed hard. What do we do? His gaze was steady and heavy. "You keep watch. You keep silence. And if you ever hear it call your name again, you must not answer." But I knew even then that the warning had come too late. I had already answered once. In the hallway, at the window, in the woods. Somewhere in that night, whether I meant to or not, I had let it know that I heard it. And it remembered. The elders left without another word. The sun rose slowly, washing the desert in pale yellow light. The shadows thinned. The cold lifted. The station returned to its ordinary stillness, but nothing felt normal anymore. Ortiz approached me carefully. "Sheriff, what do we tell the council? What do we say about the prisoner?" I looked at him for a long time. His face was tired, eyes wide with a fear he would never admit to. "Tell them nothing. Tell them he walked out before we could process him. Tell them he disappeared. And if they ask more than that, you let me handle it." He nodded, but the relief in his eyes was mixed with dread. He knew we had lost something that was never meant to be found. In the weeks that followed, the station changed. The staff avoided the cell block. Deputies refused to work night shifts alone. Some claimed to hear faint whispers coming from the dark end of the hall. One deputy swore he saw a shadow move across the barred door of the empty cell. Another said he heard something breathing in the corner of the break room when he was alone. 3 deputies left the job entirely before the season ended. They did not give reasons. But I knew. And then the sightings began. Tracks appeared near the forest boundary. Tracks that shifted in shape the farther they went. Sometimes long and slender, sometimes deep and wide, as if the creature changed form between steps. Ranchers reported missing livestock, their fences torn open without any sign of cutting or tools. Night hikers claimed they saw a tall figure watching them from the cliffs near the canyon. The reservation police kept receiving calls about a man walking on all fours or something moving through the brush faster than any human should. And every report, every story, every sighting took place during the full moon. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on my job, tried to convince myself that the night in the station had twisted my mind, made me see things that were not real. But the memories never faded. The voice never faded. And then one night I saw him again. It was late. The moon was bright above the treeline. I had just finished closing the station, locking up the front door, preparing to drive home. The desert was quiet, the kind of quiet where even the crickets fall silent. Then something moved at the edge of the trees. A tall silhouette stepped out just enough for the moonlight to catch its outline. The shape was wrong. Not human, not animal. Its limbs too long, shoulders too angled. A head bent slightly, as if it were listening. The voice reached me not through the air but through the earth under my boots. "Sheriff." My breath froze. The figure did not move. It only watched me. And somehow, in the way it stood, in the weight of its presence, I knew it remembered me. It remembered the cell. It remembered the night it changed. And it remembered who had locked the door. I backed slowly into the station without taking my eyes off the treeline. When I finally closed the door, the shape disappeared silently into the forest. Since then, the sightings have only grown. People whisper about a thing moving through the reservation, a thing with shifting skin and eyes that reflect no light. Some swear it speaks in the voice of someone they know. Others claim it follows them home from the canyons. Every full moon, I feel it before I hear it. A weight in the air, a cold that settles into the floorboards. And sometimes, late at night, in the stillness of my house, I hear my name spoken from just beyond the walls. Sheriff. Not a threat, not a plea, just a reminder. A reminder that the man we locked inside that reinforced cell was telling the truth. A reminder that the transformation did not end in that room. It began there. And now, after all these years, after all the silence and denial and attempts to bury the memory, I can finally say what I should have said the moment I saw that empty cell. I arrested a man who claimed to be a skinwalker. And when the full moon rose, he vanished from a locked cell. But what haunts me most is not that he disappeared. It is that he still comes back. And he still knows my name.